My name is Leslie Harris. I'm 21, a college student, and I stock snacks at GeoMart 3 nights a week for minimum wage. If that sounds like a tiny paragraph in someone else's life, it's the entire prologue of mine. Fluorescent lights, a scanner that never quite charges, and an endless hum of bargain brand radios playing songs I can't name anymore. My mom, Claire, remarried 2 years ago to a man named Arthur. They brought 2 kids into the house with them. Thomas, who's 9 and convinced every cardboard box is a spaceship, and Mary, who's 12 and already an expert at rolling her eyes in slow motion. I don't dislike them. I don't love them like they were mine. But I do this thing people do when they get older and softer. I try. I do the extra mile because someone has to notice that the Band-Aids are dwindling and that Thomas's science project can't glue itself together. Balancing it all is like trying to carry a stack of plates while running on a treadmill. I'm in classes during the day, lectures that require me to appear awake and hand in essays that cost concentration I don't have anymore. Then I work the evening shift at GeoMart. Between stocking, attending online group meetings for class, and pretending to read textbooks, I'm also the default chaperone, tutor, and accidental counselor for 2 kids whose emotional range runs between, I want a new game, and Mom, she took my charger. I make lunches. I read bedtime stories in an overly dramatic voice because Mary will laugh if I do the dragon with a cough. I break up fights about who gets to sit in the front seat like the UN with none of the funding. And then there's my social life, which exists in pockets of FaceTime that happen when my friends are outside laughing and I'm back in the pantry closet of our house, pretending the fluorescent hum is a soundtrack. I'm on the phone with them from the passenger seat of my own life, watching my connection buffer as they send pictures of people I used to know intimately. I say, I'm coming, and mean it. To class, to work, to anything that keeps the rent metaphorically steady and the kids metaphorically fed. But not to parties, not to spontaneous road trips, not to the kind of friendships that live on weekend mornings and lazy coffees. What's at stake is more than a GPA or a paycheck. It's the version of me I promised myself when I chose a major I actually like. It's the little margin I had for error, a sick day here, a study group there. It's my patience, which is a seasonal product and currently out of stock. I'm not naive. I know families shift, people make compromises, and marriages blend into new architectures of habit. What I can't swallow is the slow depletion of myself into the margin notes of everyone else's life. So I do it. I drive home with grocery bags and thoughts that feel like loose receipts. I scrub marker off walls with the kind of determination usually reserved for tenured professors. I sit at the kitchen table after GeoMart and grade my own tiredness. I listen to Claire rehearse the same worries about bills and then offer me a smile that says she doesn't want trouble, which is fair because she didn't sign up for me to be anything other than her daughter. Still, some nights I fall asleep thinking about how many small, invisible deposits I've made into this household and how none of them come back as interest. You're going to start paying rent, my mom said like it was a footnote to our conversation about dinner. She was at the kitchen table, hands folded, the way she arranges herself when she wants to look like a reasonable adult and not a woman who'd been arguing with a husband over whether stocking the kids' Pokemon cards counts as an essential. Arthur had been quiet in the background, scrolling something on his phone that flashed up like an accusation every time he laughed. My first reaction was the kind of laugh that slides out because you don't know whether to cry. Rent? I repeated. You want me to pay rent? Claire blinked, the polite, pleading blink that moms have perfected after decades of trying to keep the peace. Arthur brought it up, she said. He thinks it's fair. You're 21, you have a job. I work at GeoMart, I cut in. Minimum wage, Claire. I scan expired energy bars and get glares from people who will complain about the price, but not about their own decency. I go to classes during the day. I get 6 hours of sleep if the kids don't decide bedtime is negotiable tonight. How is that fair? Arthur shrugged like you shrug at a television background actor. It makes sense, he said. Contributes to the household. Contributes. The word sat in the air like a new piece of furniture everyone pretended not to notice. I felt something inside me shorten, a small, bitter chord snapping. I don't usually explode in front of my mother. I save those performances for my car, when no one's listening except a podcast and the dashboard clock. But the heat rose anyway, quick and honest. I told them everything I'd been stuffing under the sink, the missed study sessions I'd been ashamed to reschedule, the nights I ate stale bread so the kids could have proper snacks, the calls with friends where I whispered so the kids wouldn't hear, and then said, I'll be there, and lay to them like it was a minor sin. I told Claire about the way Mary had asked me once if I ever wanted to go to a concert, and I had said yes, but also no, because I had to be on duty. I told them how Thomas's science project had been glue, glitter, and my thumbprint. You don't get it, I said, voice smaller now, the scream that follows a punch. Arthur wants your rent money to buy them shiny things. He thinks a credit card and a new Lego set will fix parenting. He wants to spend my labor on their instant satisfaction. Arthur's jaw tightened. Claire's eyes flicked from my face to Arthur and back like a referee who'd been given a game she didn't sign up for. That's not true, Arthur protested. I said it would be shared. No, I interrupted. You said she should earn her keep. You said it like I'm an accessory, like I'm part of the house that can be upgraded. The kitchen seemed smaller suddenly, the fluorescent bulb over the sink too bright. There was a ridiculous thought that if I stayed one more week, I would evaporate into the wallpaper, and they'd only notice the stain when guests came. Packing became a precise, almost clinical counterattack. I didn't throw things. I folded them like evidence. Hoodie, textbooks, the chipped mug my dad gave me that said "World's Okayest Daughter" in faded letters. I left a note on Mary's bedside table that said I'd be back on Sundays. For Thomas, I tucked the little paper rocket he made into my jacket pocket and told him to promise me he wouldn't set the real rockets off inside the living room. James, my dad, answered on the first ring. When I told him I was coming over, he didn't ask for details. He just asked if I wanted his lasagna or if he should order Thai. He laughed when I said lasagna, nearly a honk of a laugh that felt like permission. Come home, kiddo, he said. My couch is terrible, and my coffee is better than none. The drive over was loud with everything I hadn't said at the table. I rehearsed lines that were sharper than the ones I'd used, tried on the satisfaction of leaving like a coat. Part of me was furious in a way that tasted like victory. Another part was raw and guilty for what staying would have cost me. James's apartment smelled like pizza in an utterly domestic, unapologetic way. The kind of space where a man can be both a collector of mismatched socks and a generous inhabitant of warmth. He'd got the bachelor aesthetic down, a stack of records, a plant that had somehow not died, a couch with a permanent indentation that matched his body like a handshake. He hugged me like he'd been waiting to practice his favorite pause. You look better, he said, and I believed him. When I laid my bag down in his spare room, a closet with an actual curtain and no questions about table manners, I felt something settle. Not solved, not fixed, but quiet enough that I could breathe without counting the cost. The money would stretch. The time would change shape. I sat on the edge of the couch and watched James flip a pizza slice like a trivial miracle. Leaving didn't feel like abandoning anyone. It felt like reclaiming the space where I could be allowed to be 21 without being an installment plan. After a few weeks under my dad's terrible couch and excellent lasagna, things started to feel like new ground instead of a tightrope. I slept later. My classes stopped feeling like a scavenger hunt for attention. I actually showed up with the right readings. I started saying yes to plans without mentally calculating whether the kids would combust if I left. My friends noticed. They stopped sending those cautious "you coming" texts and started sending "meet at 8" texts, the kind that assume you'll be there. I went, and it felt strange and normal at the same time. Work at Geomart shifted too. I'd been doing the quiet math in the aisles, hours in versus bills out, and one night my manager Devin pulled me into the back room and said, "You're covering more shifts, you train, and you do it without complaining. We're bumping you." A raise at a place that trades in coupons felt like someone finally adjusting the thermostat in my life. It wasn't a windfall. but it was proof that effort could translate into something other than exhaustion. More than money, I had time. Time to study on a couch that didn't scent of last-minute parenting panic. Time to actually be a person who wanted things beyond Band-Aids and lunchbox negotiations. My grades stabilized. I answered emails without the feeling that I'd swallowed a wasp. I even had the nerve to ask for favors from people I liked. Cover me this Friday? Or, want to go to a lecture? And they said yes because I was there to accept, not to text apologies from the pantry. Then the call came. Claire's voice was thin in a way that made me remember summers when she'd sound like that after crying in the laundry room. She said it slowly, like there were pieces she needed to set down before she could say them without breaking. It's a nightmare, Leslie. With Arthur's kids, it's hard. We're not managing. We need help. She promised over and over that the rent talk was over. Arthur, according to her, had been mortified when she'd pushed back. He was deeply sorry and ashamed he'd suggested it, and that he'd realized it had come out of selfishness rather than partnership. Hearing Arthur sound contrite over the phone was not catharsis. It was a soundbite. I let the apology sit where it could do the least damage, in the air between us. I'm not gullible. I've learned to read people the way I read expiration dates. But I'm not unforgiving either. I could feel the tug, the part of me that wanted to be the person who saves everyone, and the person who knew saving yourself sometimes means saying no to being spent. So I agreed to Sundays. Not as a concession stamped with a due date, but as a boundary framed like a handrail. Sundays would be my volunteer hours of goodwill. They wouldn't subsidize a household I'd been expected to underwrite. Claire sounded relieved in a way that made me feel guilty, and then adult in a way that reminded me why I loved her. She said thank you, quiet and earnest, and for the first time in a while, I believed her. Sundays turned out to be surprisingly small and very human. I helped Thomas with a glue-heavy volcano that refused to erupt, and Mary asked me to teach her how to fold origami swans without rolling her eyes in cinematic slow motion. Arthur tried to be affectionate in the way men who read How to Be a Better Parent at 2 a.m. are. Earnest, a little awkward, intent on 45% follow-through. He apologized in person, too. Not a grand performance. Just a few sentences and a half smile that felt like the beginning of something or nothing, depending on his next choices. What mattered more than his words was my own. The small, practical ones I started telling myself each morning. No, I don't pay rent. Yes, I will help on Sundays. Yes, I will go to the lecture, and yes, I will take the raise, and yes, I will let my dad make lasagna until he stops because he enjoys it. The victory wasn't theatrical. It was accounted for in the tiny ledgers of daily life. I had reclaimed the right to be 21 and messy and ambitious without being a funding plan. A month in, Mary hugged me at the door the way she'd only ever hugged me when she'd wanted something. This time, it was nothing transactional. "Thanks for coming," she said, and I didn't need to catalog the motive. The volcano we made still sat in the kitchen, dry and glittering like bad art. I laughed with Thomas at something stupid he said about space helmets and cereal boxes. Claire made coffee and didn't ask for anything she couldn't offer back. The moral, if there must be one, and I prefer to call it a resolution, was quieter than revenge or triumph. Boundaries are a kind of mercy. Leaving had not been dramatic. It had been decisive. Coming back, on my terms, felt like closing a loop where everybody learned they couldn't treat belonging like a subscription service. Peace didn't announce itself with trumpets. It arrived in the clink of a lasagna dish, a corrected essay, a raised paycheck, and a Sunday that I chose to give.